All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I believe this is episode 7 of season 2. We're getting into depths when I start forgetting what episode I'm on, so just bear with me. Um, but as always, I just want to say thank you all for listening. Thank you all for your support, not only for myself, but also for the people I've had on here, wrapping around what they do, their expertise, their businesses, and just uplifting them even after the show and stuff like that. So thank you for continuing to keep the mission strong and just uplifting these individuals, but also uplifting um, child welfare and the expertise and the lived experience people behind it. Um, so, yeah, I know I can talk. I'm not, going to ramble on this time. I'm going to have my guest introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eshontee Rowe. I'm sorry, my computer's making noise behind me. I'm Eshontee Rowe. I'm 25 years old. I have lived experience in the Georgia foster care system. I am a singer, songwriter, serial entrepreneur, an author, and so many other things. And I can't wait to get to dive deep into, what our discussion is going to be on today.
Definitely, it's truly an honor and a privilege to have you on. Um, I start these out and I've been doing them for a little bit of time, and everyone has their unique passage, but best way to really get into it is to just get into it. So my first question to you is, you spoke about having lived experience. So let's start there. Um, to what depths did that experience start for you? And to whatever ability that you're comfortable with, feel free to share.
Sure. So I actually want to start and go all the way back. So I can say 17 years ago, there was an experience that changed my life forever, that became the catalyst of traumatic events that took place in my childhood. So at the age of 8, my father committed suicide, and it was unexpected. It was on Father's Day, and it just turned our worlds upside down. I came from a 2-parent household. I have 3 other siblings. I'm the third of the 4. We did activities, basketball, cheerleading, step team, different things. We were preparing to move to Florida. We lived in Georgia in the Stone Mountain area, but we were preparing to move to Florida. And right before our expected move, my dad decided to take his life. And so I want to bring that up in light of Suicide Prevention Month. So, but that was the start of a bunch of trauma. I suffered with depression for the majority of my childhood. So I started having different episodes, and they were really cries out for help, because I needed the extra assistance and the extra counseling. And so it led to anger, which would cause me to lash out. I would get up, I would experience these things such as bullying, both at school and at home, and feeling like I was unlovable, like nobody wanted me. I started to feel the abandonment and the rejection, and it would fester. And so at different moments, I would just have these outbursts and these moments where it was like, yo, what just happened? Like, what really just happened to her? And so that would take place. And it got to a point where I was having physical altercations, not only with my siblings, but with my mother. And my mom would always say, well, she hasn't taken her medication. And I got misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, because I was just an angry kid. I mean, I had some trauma, and then on top of that, let's talk about puberty. Like that's a mess in itself. But I experienced so many things. And so the cycle was get into a fight, go into a mental behavior hospital, get treatment for a week's time, be done with that, come back home, we start fresh, we keep it pushing the way we kept it pushing. Well, on this particular event, it happened right before Thanksgiving. So many traumatic things happen around holidays. It's crazy. But I'm glad, I thank God I can talk about it. a couple days before Thanksgiving in 2012, if I remember correctly. I went to a friend's house, spent the weekend with a friend, had a really good time, came back home, and an altercation broke out between me and my mom. And, the same typical thing, call the police, go be transported to the hospital. They say she's diagnosed with bipolar disorder and all these things. So I went through the treatment. And in traditional treatment, there's always a family plan and a strategy that's put in place for a youth to go home. Well, in this particular plan, my mom expressed that she did not want me to come home, that she wanted me to go to long-term. And because whatever happened with my insurance company, they did not accept me to go into long-term. So the other alternative was to put me in DFACS. And my mom put me in custody. We've had a healing conversation around it, because she expressed that she wanted to get me help and she didn't know how to help me. And so that was the only way that she knew that she could get me the help that I needed, which turned out to be a lot more traumatizing than it was good. So I ended up in foster care at the age of 15. And so at 15 and a half, right at 15 and a half, I ended up in foster care. I started off in a respite placement, did not have a good experience, because all I could think about was the nurses calling me to the nurses station and telling me, your mom said she's not coming to get you. And what was expressed in the family meeting, the family session right before, it just created even more anger, where I wanted to break stuff, where I wanted to call and cuss her out. And I just wanted to do all these irrational, emotional things. I mean, in a moment where you depend on one sole parent and you're like, wait, hold up, what they said, they ain't coming to get me. It was just a ball of emotions. And so I remember going into that respite placement, and the lady, she was doing things for her children that she just would not do for me. So her son suffered from autism, and he would have these outbreaks, and he would just start cussing his mom out and doing all types of crazy stuff. And I remember I wouldn't speak, but one day we sat in the car and he just was going off on her. And the boy was 8. And I looked at his sister and I said, what is wrong with him? She reported that back to her mom, and her mom was like, you don't ask me what's wrong with my child. There's nothing wrong with my child. And you better be glad that wasn't my oldest child, because she would have. And from that moment, I knew that if I was going into foster care, I needed to hush. And I need to make every placement that I stayed in peaceable. I had to be at peace with everybody. Even when people didn't want to be at peace with me, I did my best to be at peace with others. And so that was the start. And so I ended up going through foster care from going through the system in the state of Georgia from 15 into 21. I aged out at 21 and was able to do so many different things. I'm a youth leader on the Georgia Empowerment Board. I'm a youth advocate there. I'm also on the youth advisory board for AmeriGroup, which is where we get our insurance with. So I've been able to do so many things with just being able to express and talk about my experience in the foster care system.
Awesome. You gave me a lot of different points there. Now I want to touch back.
Sure.
And from a very young age, you experienced a very traumatic and wild trauma, of your dad suicide. That's very unimaginable, of all days on Father's Day. From there, I can imagine mental health was a struggle, and trying to maintain the reality without your dad now, without a real explanation of why, other than what you can come up with in your child mind, and then when mentally you can't come up with right answers, it starts to become physical. It starts to come out. And that is where you saw those behaviors and what have you. And I have a very similar experience, we talked before in sharing each other's experiences, but, I came to the juvenile side due to behaviors, much like yourself, unfortunately, due to a lack of people understanding, I was scapegoated because of my behaviors. But I believe we were talking about behavior being language.
Yeah.
And a lot of people not really taking that time, or a lot of people not being in the right understanding to be able to receive, okay, this isn't towards me.
Right.
You
Right.
know, this is something else, and I need to help, this child, my child, or
Mhm.
this individual be able to come back to mental, so we can talk about it. So it's not so much outward behaviors anymore, you
Absolutely.
know. But unfortunately, you didn't get that opportunity, and unfortunately, it took you some time and care, which was re-traumatizing in its own right,
Yeah.
to come out. And I don't know if that conversation with your mom happened in your adulthood,
It
years
did.
later,
It
you
did.
know. So it took a lifetime, if we could say that,
Yeah.
um, to get to a place mentally, and a healing place with your mom, and that's unfortunate. Because too many people like me and yourself, we the same age.
Right.
It's either too late sometimes, or you just don't have those conversations.
Right.
So I appreciate you sharing that, and appreciate you being vulnerable with that. I kind of want to navigate a little bit further. Now you're in your adulthood. What did that look like? Aging out, and what did it cost?
Man, the aging out process was a process. Oh, it was a process. So I'm going to jump back to
Okay.
17, age 17. I'm in a group home. I'm doing what I need to do to be in a group home, to go ahead and just transition out to go into an IOP. So I was in a placement. I was 16 years old, and I met another girl that so happened to be in an IOP placement that I wanted to be in, and she was in my class. She was my classmate. So we had an IOP meeting. For those who don't know who IOP is, it's independent living programs. So we had this big meeting that we have within our city, and she was like, yeah, I live in this placement and I stay here. And she was pretty much essentially giving me the tea. She was like, look, I got my own apartment here. I just had to be 17 and all this stuff. So my 17th birthday was right around the corner. And she telling me these things. And I'm like, all right. I done got into a fight at this other placement. They done put me in this IOP house, and I really don't like it here. I really want my own space because I don't want to make it seem like I'm better than people, but I was far way more advanced than the girls that were there. They were interesting, to say the least. And I'm in a house full of 16 to 20, 21-year-olds, and I'm just like, yeah, this ain't it. I need to leave. And so she was telling me everything about it, and I had to fight my way out. I mean, physically fight my way out of that placement to get placed into the IOP program that I was in, that I ended up going to. I had a case manager that didn't believe me. It got so bad where the girls were so upset with me. We end up I'm sorry, let me backtrack. I got into it with one of the girls who was one of the leaders of the house. You know how that is in the group homes, where it's that one person who's the alpha, and it's like someone else comes in and it seems like they threaten their throne or whatever, which is so crazy. I got into an argument with one of the alpha females there who kind of ran the house, who had been there for some time, and over a bathtub, not cleaning the bathtub out, because I was working. I was in school. I was in the marching band. I was also in dual enrollment. So I had one class at my high school during the day. And then I wandered throughout the streets because my group home would not let me come home when I wasn't in class. And then I rode the bus to go to my college courses in the evening. And so I spent a lot of time out and about. Everyone else got rides to school. I had to ride the bus because my school was across town, because I pushed and advocated that I stayed in the school that I was going to so I could graduate. And so one night I got there about 11 o'clock, everybody in the house is asleep. And I took a shower and I'm like, I'm just not cleaning up this goddamn tub. I'm not doing it tonight. I'm tired. And so me and this particular young lady got into a really bad argument, and she banged on my door and she's like, "You're gonna come and clean this up." And I was like, "You can kiss it." Yeah. And so it went from there, and it was a domino effect from there. So all the other girls began to group against me, and they didn't want to be around me. And it got so bad to the point where they were, I didn't know, for about a month, they were spitting in my food. They would eat all the food, and whatever plate that was left aside from me, my food was being spit in. And one day, one of the young ladies came to me and she said, "Girl, I put your food up because if I did, they would have spit in it." And my whole face was like, "They would have did what? They had been doing what?" And so experiencing staff members who didn't believe me, after the girl would get into arguments with me and say, "That's why I spit in your food." Like it became real rough and real hard to stay there. And then, of course, the other girls that followed behind her, they had issues with me and they wanted to fight me. So I literally had to fight my way out of that group home and lose that placement in order to get into an independent living program, where I didn't get to stay for long either. I got there, I was, self-sufficient. I'm working, I'm going to school, I'm doing all these things, these great things. And we come to the point of graduation, and I'm like, all right, I'm graduating high school, and I'm going to college. I wanted to go to a school. Oh my gosh, why is the name of the school slipping my mind? It was a private school in the state of Georgia. And if you go to school in the state of Georgia, and you get ILP funding for it, you have to go to a public state school because it's the cheapest route for the state, and they pay less on the back end. So they may end up paying for like a little bit less than what your Pell Grant pays for. So I didn't get to go to the school, Shorter University. I wanted to go to Shorter University for theology and music. I wanted to be a pastor. And so that dream was shot down. And I, towards the end of the summer, when it was time for me to go off to school, I had no plan on what school to go to. I didn't have anything lined up. I can say it was a miracle from God that I started getting scholarships back to back. 2 weeks before I went off to college, I had $20,000 in scholarship money that was awarded to me. It just kind of dropped out of the sky out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, God, I thank you. And I ended up being connected with the president's wife of the unsinkable, indestructible Albany State University. But I was very reluctant. I was like, I'm 18 now. I'm working. I'm doing all these great things. I'm in this ILP program. I got this scholarship money. Why y'all trying to uproot me and move me 3 hours away from where I call home to Albany, Georgia? My man's here. He's he's my fiance now, but he was my boyfriend at the time. I'm like, my man's here, my apartment's here, my job's here. Y'all trying to move me. Y'all not gonna take my stability from me. This is what I wanted. And I fought. I got down to Albany State. And by coincidence, which if you're a believer in the faith, you know that there's no such things as coincidences. I got down to Albany State freshman orientation day. It was the week before school, and they had another freshman orientation, and I came down there on a Wednesday, and I came there with an attitude. I'm not going to Albany State. I don't know why these folks got me down here. They got me messed up. I'm not coming here. I don't care what y'all trying to advertise to me. Y'all trying to trick me. I ain't coming. And so ultimately, after going through the campus, meeting the chair of my department, the music department, and navigating, I was forced to make a decision. It was a split decision. And I eventually chose, after consulting my boyfriend at the time and talking to some other people, I chose to ultimately to go to Albany State. And when I tell you that was the roughest transition, I was mad at everybody. I was mad because you uproot me from my regular life, what I'm used to, and you take me down here where there's no buses. I have to learn how to drive because you can't get across town if you don't have a car at this point. Like, I didn't know anybody, and I felt so alone. And I excelled my first semester in college, but I was angry. I was so angry at everybody. And so it was really hard to matriculate through school, because there's another added layer to that. Was I was the only one out of my siblings to go into foster care. And so now I'm experiencing survivor's guilt, because when I look at them at the time, they didn't have, my brothers, who were my two older brothers, they didn't have high school diplomas. My oldest brother has a certificate of completion, and my second oldest brother dropped out of school. And then my younger sister at the time, she was still in high school. And so I'm like, everyone's doing horribly, and here I am making it, and I feel so guilty. And so the added layer of going home to see my family, and they see all these successes and they see all these great things, but they're like, you chose foster care. And it's like, dang, like I can't even win for lose. I can't even win for lose. And I dealt with that for several years, actually up until recently. I had to get into my heart that I will no longer feel bad about a decision that I made that was best for me at the time, with the details and all the information and knowledge I had at that time. And so ultimately I chose what was best for me. And I had to get to a place where I'm like, I don't apologize. Don't apologize for this. So transitioning into adulthood and getting to a point where I'm getting close to aging out was hard. It was so hard.
Wow. You touched on a couple of points, I'm gonna go back and summarize a little bit.
Okay.
Pull out some of these things that stuck out to me. Let's just talk about the aspect of group homes, independent living programs, residentials, whichever one we can compass all that together, I tell people in my experience, what it's like being a male in these facilities, in these group homes. It's very top dog kind of, prison yard kind of aspect of it. Like, and a lot has not really changed, and surprisingly, a lot has not really changed in the dynamic of these, and more so in independent living, at the time that I was there, we had staff from 11 to 7. Mm-hmm. Besides that, there wasn't any staffing really. You had people there that were like life coaches or what have you.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it was really like independent living, Mm-hmm. And it was just, for me, I went into a pilot program right before I aged out, and there was this aspect that you had to do everything right, to be the example for everyone else. I experienced racism. I experienced somebody threatening me with a gun, and they had a gun hid outside that they somehow got from somebody down the street, and they called me and the staff the N-word and said they was gonna shoot us. I experienced people spitting food, people stealing food, all this other stuff. It's crazy when, well, not really crazy, it's reassuring when I hear other people went through similar things. I just survived. Mm-hmm. I had to make it out. And right. I like to tell people, and I'm being completely honest because, audience, there's no perfect individual. God is continuing to work on me. I am 6 years sober from fighting. And that's how I look at it for myself.
That is so funny, because I used to say my ministry was rated E for everybody, babies and old folks included. I'm the same way.
And let me break that down for you guys. You're like, well, you don't do drugs or this, that, and the third. For me, fighting had become addictive because it was something that I knew I had to do to make ends meet. People wasn't going to respect me. People wasn't going to give me my space unless I had put my hands on them. So me fighting became a way of getting means to an end, me making it. And granted, I wasn't a person that just outright fought people, bullied people, nothing like that. For years, I was severely bullied. For years, I had been just targeted in these places. And I had enough of it. I was like, I'm no longer, when somebody targets me, I'm not going to just let that keep happening, because I'm not about to go through 6 months to 9 months with you just sitting here,
Yeah,
doing
pushing
what
up
you're
on me and
doing,
bullying
you
me.
know.
Like enough is enough. Yeah, I
Right.
agree.
Right. So, it started to become a thing and what have you. And I can't express enough that a lot of people who end up in care because of their behaviors, it's more so environmental. Um, it's more so the lack of communication and really understanding that individual, and less so that this person has issues that we need to medicate. Granted, there are some times, but
Agree.
but on the very far end, because I can kind of mirror our stories,
Yeah.
it's making, being labeled with ADHD, impulsive, mental instability because, being abused. And I got to a place where I was no longer was just gonna accept the abuse. Like I started to act out, like, numb out, and that pain became outward,
Yeah.
So yeah. So I just wanted to, break that down for people because it's interesting hearing it, because a lot of males do end up in these facilities and what have you. But it's interesting hearing it from the female perspective of, hey, look, I've had to survive too, so it's not one-sided. So y'all
No,
know,
not at all.
like this is happening on both sides. Like, it is an issue, and unfortunately it's ran, you would think it's ran by like these organizations, these staff and stuff. Like, no, it literally would be somebody that's been there for a while,
Yep.
ain't really got nothing going for them,
That part.
and this person, they keep trying to give chance after chance. They've been there the longest, and that person is like the top dog in this
Yeah.
place, and just
Yeah.
bullying and making other people submit, and follow behind this individual.
Yeah.
And people who try to be successful, people who try to do the right things in these programs ultimately suffer or fall prey to following right behind
Yeah.
because, in order to make it through, that's what they got to endure if they choose the, alternative. So most people will be like, I would just rather, deal with this, than have to continue fighting every day.
Yeah, they take on that. If I can't beat them, I guess I'll join them type mentality.
Right.
And then I want to also double back to where you were talking about fighting in mental, being misdiagnosed or being diagnosed with something. Like it makes it even harder to fight the fact that you're trying to prove that you're not whatever they say you are. Because like now I have to fight my way through. I've struggled to try to get off medication for years. I was struggling at home to try to get off medication. Because my psychiatrist and my therapist, when I was at home, they weren't listening. They were just going based off of the things that were said or my actions. But I was like, nobody's trying to hear me. And so when I got into care, it was an extra like, oh, well, she already got this in her case plan and this is on her file and this is on her record and this is how she is. So now I'm going into a facility or I'm going into a home where I'm already being prejudged. Well, she did this and she did this and she did that. And no one asked me why I did that. No one asked if I was trying to defend myself. And now I'm trying to fight the fact that you're trying to say that I'm bipolar and that I'm manic depressive and all these crazy different things. And I'm trying to fight you so I can get off these medications. But there's other people in the home that's triggering these things for me to react in the way that is written on the paperwork. So it's a constant cycle and it's a constant fight.
As I said, environment means everything. Even when you ain't care. Like I'm telling you guys, and I'm gonna reiterate it because I've been using it. I've been using it after you told me, behavior is language.
Yes.
Like, and the main part, if you're trying to understand someone's behavior, look at the environment and start from there. Look at the environment, what's conducive. And then once you see the environment, look at the people in and around that environment and how they are acting towards the individual. I promise you, you if you ain't got no clues, pass, go, come back again, collect your 200. I promise you, you will pick up something. But just going back down, because you also mentioned something that in passing, I've talked to a lot of people who have siblings. Some of those siblings went in care, some of those siblings did not go into care. And they find themselves in the same kind of predicament where you were, where siblings feel some type of way. Just saying how it is, feel some type of way, not knowing the battles that you had to fight and what have you. And they feel like you are better than, or, this, that, and the third, So what I want to pause at this space, and what advice could you give to individuals who are in that place of guilt and want a relationship with their siblings, but are tortured by that mentally, but also by that physically?
First, when they do AA meetings, they say first you have to acknowledge the issue. So back in 2020, I didn't realize that was such a heavy burden until I came upon graduation. I was graduating in the midst of the pandemic. So the pandemic hit in March. I was due to graduate in May. And so I reached out to an organization, and they sent me a life coach to talk to me, to kind of do some career coaching with me. And I don't remember what the life coach said, what question prompted me to give this answer, but she said, what the question was something along the lines, how do you feel about you and your successes versus your sibling successes? And I said, I feel like I cheated. I feel like I cheated. I went into foster care and I got all these benefits and I got all these perks, and I wasn't worthy of them. I didn't work hard for them. And I didn't deserve this, and they're suffering, and this is my fault. And she had to let me know, she's like, you made the right decision for yourself with the knowledge that you had. And so that was something that I had to take, and I had to really like meditate on, like, Shanti, you didn't do anything to say that you didn't deserve what you had coming to you with all these benefits. You said that before I even went into care, I said, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to have scholarship money. I never put a number on it, but I said, I'm going to have scholarship money. I'm going to go to college for free. I'm going to do these things. I'm smart. I'm going to make it. And so it took me a long time. And I think something else that opened my eyes is I worked in the admissions department at Albany State University after I graduated. And so I could go back and see some of my old records. And with me going back and looking at those records, it showed me that you did make the GPA to get into school. You did have the grades. You did meet the application requirements. You needed those things. And I feel like God gave me that chance to have that lens to see, like, hey, you worked hard for this. How I did it for you was an alternate route for what you expected it to be and what you wanted to be. But ultimately, you worked hard to get to this place. So don't you dare feel like you cheated. And for anyone else who's going through this situation, don't you dare feel bad for what you have and what you did with the resources that were presented to you. Because I can guarantee if the shoe was on the other foot, they would have chose the same thing. They would have looked at the perks and the benefits and they would have chose the same thing. So don't ever get caught up and upset about what is given to you. My favorite public speaker, her name is Lisa Nichols. She talks about her story where she had her baby Jelani, and she was living in, I believe it was Compton, and she had nothing going for herself. And she said, sometimes you have to leave the neighborhood to come back and to save the people that are in the neighborhood. Sometimes you have to go away and then come back. You can't be your best self if you're surrounded around people who aren't doing nothing, who ain't going nowhere, who ain't being nothing. So sometimes God will uproot you and move you just so he can get you to himself, to shape you and mold you to where you're supposed to be and to get you where you're supposed to be. So you can go back and show, hey, there's more. I would come and also don't get caught up in the rejection, because when I went off to college, I was able to go study abroad in Paris and London for a week. And I would come back and say, hey, y'all should go to school. Let's go to college. Like, look, let's get this money and let's go to college because there's more out there. Then another opportunity came up and I went to Mexico for a week. And I'm like, come on, y'all, like there's a whole beautiful world out here. Like, come explore. It's so much out here. And then I went to China, and those things, they would get mad. They get pissed off. But now to this day, my siblings will come to me and be like, Shanti, what did you do? Can you tell me the secret? What's the secret sauce? I tell people the secret sauce is Jesus. So that if you not rocking with Jesus, then all power to you. But I know who I rock with, and Jesus I'm telling you, he changed my life, because I was a mess and I was on a downward path to hell. I was a mess and a half. But like I said, if that's not your forte, and if that's not your spiritual belief, I completely understand, and I'm not knocking you. But it was a certain path that was aligned out for me. And I let them know, like, hey, these are the steps that you can take. And I'm there to hold their hand if to be a guide, but I won't be a crutch.
Definitely. I appreciate you expressing that, and I hope that is helpful to some of the audience members listening, because I see this a lot when it comes to siblings, and especially in care, because, it's no one person experience trauma the same.
Yeah.
There's different sacrifices that the individuals have to make on their own lives, which is that choice.
Yeah.
We all have choices to make. And unfortunately, when it comes to that thing, and when they're intertwined with child welfare and somebody's not in it or what have you, resentment somehow finds its way.
Yeah.
And it's especially if there's younger siblings, that stayed with mom or stayed with dad, and what have you, and they really don't understand because this was different for them, or what have you.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that me and my youngest sister, and I only have one sister, but that's what we struggle with for years. She would say, "You left me. When you left me. You didn't want to be at the house with me. When you chose to stay in care, you didn't want to be with me." And I said, it had nothing to do with you. It was so much bigger than you. I said, please know that I was a child and I couldn't do anything different. The only option they gave me was to stay or to go. And they told me the benefits. And I said, if I leave, I'm going to miss out on these benefits. So it hurt to stay. And I had to affirm her and let her know, like, please know, throughout the course of me staying in care, that did not mean that I loved you any less. Didn't mean that I didn't think about you. Didn't mean that I didn't want to protect you from whatever else was going on. But at that time, I had to stay. It had to happen this way. My love doesn't change. It doesn't change. I needed that in that moment. And they'll learn to appreciate it. I would have that conversation with my sister from the age of 18, 16, her age, all the way up until now. I'm 25 and she's 23, and I still let her know, like, I loved you regardless of whether you felt like I abandoned you. I still love you, and I'm still here for you. And you have to give people also that space to accept that into their hearts, however they choose to accept it, and be okay if they choose not to.
Definitely. I appreciate you sharing that piece and offering that advice up. It's a conversation that continues to need to be out there by people who experience the same pathways as you. And fortunately, I have a very unique situation where it's trying to build a better relationship with my siblings, but there's a lot of things in between that were beyond me before I even came around, and unfortunately they had things that they had to survive through, and when the option was given and what have you, and I don't even know if it wasn't even a choice really, because you can't, as a child, like they don't give you no choice, like you going to care. Or you going to juvenile. Like that was my choice. I was putting handcuffs, and what have you. But, trying to explain that to people who had to survive through it is the hardest thing, versus, look, I wasn't doing that, there's a different path chosen for me and I had no control over it, But going back, you also express, transition. Like I just, take a moment to speak about transition, because I think it's a trend where some of us have a hard time locking into a place, or some of us have a hard time leaving and taking those transitions. And and there's a select few that's in that middle that's like, yeah, I'm good, these things, I'm all right. But a lot of us who experience care, like it's either one or the other, it's never like, wow, let me figure this out. Even as 25, I still have certain habits that I learned, I see about myself where it comes to unpacking or really establishing myself in a place, or, moving, it's easy for me to sink into situational depression or tune out things, when I have to make a new, move, because the way my mind works is I don't know this place. I don't know what it's going to hold. Me and God, we accomplished this place right here. I've been praying. It's been, left here and everything. I ain't praying over that place yet. Me and God, I don't even know if the line is tapped in yet for me to connect to him.
You're so right.
Like it's just a lot, so for me, like, and I know somebody's like, man, these are very irrational, Michael. What are you talking about? But for me, in my mind, this is the process that I go through when transition arrives. I have no problem. I have no problem uprooting, but settling, feeling comfortable with the settling, feeling comfortable with the transition. It's very hard for me. It is very hard. If it was plausible to probably live in my car and be like comfortable, I more than likely would. Like
I actually plan to live in my car my senior year of college, so I'm with you on that.
But I don't like cramped spaces. I like to be able to get out and, do stuff. So
you got options. We got van life. We got campers. We got options.
Look, don't give me.
I'm telling you, these were things I was studying. I was like, you know what? I'm finna be homeless, like they say in the stats. I'm finna be homeless. What can we do? So
definitely, and I've been there. I slept in my car. I slept on the streets, and we come back to that aspect of choice, and where can I be, and what does God really envision for me? It's been a struggle, but also one thing I have to know is, in order to do this work and continue to create spaces like this, I have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable with myself. I have to take myself to those spaces to heal and work on those spaces to be able to be here and offer that back to individuals or to the next generation. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If I want to preach about advocacy, if I want to walk this walk, I'm not going to walk this walk and say that I'm perfect. Like, we have so many people projecting that. I'm far from it. As I speak on here, y'all know I got stuff I'm working on and trying to be better and trying to continue to grow. Healing is a lifelong journey. Yes, I have healed from a lot of what I've been through. But to say I am good, perfect, nah.
I'm telling you, as an advocate that gets before people and do stuff. It's some days where I leave off stage and I'm just like, bro, why the hell did I talk about that? And go into a space. So what you're saying is all real. So thank you for bringing that point up, because I talk about this also in the church too. Like, there has to be a level of transparency. Too many people are portraying perfect, and we're at home dying. We're at home depressed, and we're just like, I'm about to lose my mind. And if one more person calls me and tells me I'm a strong individual, I'm gonna strangle them. Like, too many of us are going through that, and there has to be a level of transparency where we're talking about these things. Yes, you may see me in California speaking on this great board, and you see these accolades on Facebook, and you see these things on my LinkedIn profile, but you don't know what happens after these events. Like, you don't know what happens to me. Like, and thank you for expressing that, because that's so needed. Like, that's so needed to be talked about.
Definitely. The thing is, like, everyone is a human being. You
Right.
know, when I look at celebrity outbursts, when I look at, our politicians, falling short, all these things, I feel like, okay, now they're on the news because of what? Not saying it is wrong, but what they did is more than likely probably wrong. But at the
Right.
end of the day,
We're
these
human.
people are human.
Right.
Have we thought about what mental health that they need? Have we
Right.
thought about what all this pressure of being that individual feels like? Because we not in their shoes, you know. And I look at that even now, like a lot of foster alumni, adoption, kinship, counseling, all that. A lot of alumni who comes out and get to that place of so-called making it, and quote unquote, yeah, I can't see me, but I'm quote unquote in my fingers, so-called making it, you know, and not even just foster alumni. We could say for a more realistic standpoint, that one family member that quote unquote make it,
Yeah.
um, we don't think they go through the same things. It's those rationales, it's those stigmas, it's those labels, it's those narratives, those judgments, those biases that we project out that keeps us going.
Yeah.
Mental health is a thing for everybody. The situational depression, I feel like it's a thing for everybody. Everybody don't have to be diagnosed with chronic depression, but I can tell you, everybody has probably experienced situational depression.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so stress, frustration, anxiety, these are things that are trending in our society, and people feel ashamed, feel embarrassed, and they project something that they're not with these masks that we try to wear out into the world, and ultimately, what are we saying to the younger people who are looking at us that we don't know is looking at us?
Right.
There's my little rant, there's my little tangent on, just reflect on that, think about it,
Hey,
but
been some real facts there.
okay, so you got to college, you spoke about, graduating and, COVID arising and everything. Where is life now? Expertise and all. Like, what does that look like, for you now, present day?
So life present day. Well, since we talk about cycles and generational things as well, life right now is I'm in a kinship kind of situation. It's not legal binding, but I've taken on and to help support my sister while she can get that mental health support and other financial supports and whatever she needs. I've taken in her two children. And so I'm engaged, but overnight we went from just a household of 3, me, him, and the dog, to a household of 5, with a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. So life is different. But I also still work with Georgia Empowerment. I am still a youth advocate on that board. I also work with the Mayor Group, with their youth advisory board. But I also work for an organization called Think of Us. So many of you who are watching or listening to this podcast, you'll probably have heard of them on the internet. You've probably seen some things come up about, get $1,000 in a cash grant and all these things. But I work as a community responder in the state of Georgia. We have 3 states that we work in. We work in the Baltimore area, we work in California, and we work in Georgia at the moment. Where we connect youth that are in who have lived experience in foster care, kinship care providers, foster parents, whoever has some type of relationship to child welfare system. We connect them with local resources in their area. So if you suffer from not being able to pay your rent and you're past doing your rent, you can go to thinkofus.com and you can request virtual support services. And that's where my job comes in, to help support the young adults and young people in the state of Georgia, which is really, really rewarding, because I'm giving back to literally, the population that I was just once a part of, and it wasn't that long ago. And so through that work, I'm able to connect with a lot of young people throughout the state of Georgia, and to let them know, like, hey, like, When I do my intro, I'm like, hey, I'm Eshontee. I'm 25 years old. I have lived experience in care. I was in kinship, foster home, group homes, IOP. I was in it all. So don't think of me like no case manager. I ain't no case manager. You know, sometimes these relationships with these case managers can really be sucky. Don't think of me like that. Think of me like a sister in foster care. Let's talk. Let's get it done. Let's figure out how to, I say finesse the system, even though it's not finessing the system, it's taking advantage of the resources that are out there, but they like to hear the word finesse. So I'm like, let's figure out how to finesse the system. Let's run this money up. Like, let's get it. Like, let's figure out where we can get this help. And so I offer in both the capacity as a person to support, but also like a friend, because most times we just need a friend. So besides that important work that I do in child welfare and being a TT mom, I also am a business owner. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My backdrop kind of sucks, but Rowe Muse Inc. is the name of my company, where we turn starving artists into paid creatives. Oftentimes when I was in care, we had these programs that would come in and help with theater. We had a lot of kids in the group homes who would make raps, and they would make songs and stuff about their experience and their lived experience to kind of express some of the emotion. And so, I'm sorry, another side story. When I was 5 years old, my dad asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, I want to be a singer. So I went to school and got my degree in music, and I was performing locally, but then the pandemic came and it shut everything down. And I was like, okay, God, how do we do this? How do I still make money and still want to pursue my passion? And a lot of times when I was in school, they would say, you're getting a music degree, what you gonna do with it? How you gonna find a real job? And I'm like, a real job? Any job that pays me is a real job. So if I'm getting paid to sing, it's a real job. So, but there's a huge barrier. If you're not in the industry or you're not familiar with anything in the industry, it's going to be really hard to figure out how to get in and how to make your creativity work for you, where it makes you money and you're working your passion, not working a job just to live. And so that's where Rowe Muse Inc. comes into play, where we turn starving artists into paid creatives. We help them create business incomes and establish themselves not only as an artist, but as a creative. I'm also an author. I've written, Lord, that is bad English. I have written several different articles on the behalf of foster youth for the Child Advocates of Georgia and various different other different other organizations. Jesus, I can't speak. And I'm also I'm actually in the process of writing a book called Behind Her Eyes, where it'll be a personal autobiography where I talk about not only my childhood experiences, but also the lens of being a known advocate and the struggles behind being a front face advocating on behalf of an issue and dealing with your traumas and things in the background. And so I'm currently working on that. Within the next couple of weeks, I should have pre-order sales and all those things up for that. But I'm working on that project because I feel like there needs to be transparency. People need to know that you could be fighting on the behalf of an issue, a social justice issue, whatever issue it is, and you can still have your own personal struggles behind closed doors. And so I'm going to give a personal insight on my own personal life about how I've had to deal with, advocating on the behalf of suicide prevention, as well as being an advocate for foster youth and in various other areas of childhood trauma, but me facing my own internal battles after I go before others and talk about it.
Definitely. So. I appreciate that. And one thing I want to uplift as we get to the end of this wonderful episode is that there's many other avenues of people who advocate, but also are working through things. So that does not make you weak. That doesn't make you less than and as an advocate, or what have you. So I want to stop that before that even get projected out.
Amen.
Because a lot of people are like, oh, you're not healed enough to be, or you don't have the right voice, no. And too many times, and they, when it comes to foster care and advocacy, they look for people who fit this perfect narrative to speak. But the person they probably should be talking to, the person that, still cussing after every couple words, still,
Right.
and dealing with some stuff. Because if they actually listen to them, they'll probably find some pieces that we've been missing some stuff, and some stuff been falling through the cracks and everything. Not saying that one person is better than the other, but I'm just saying that there's no one perfect voice, and we need to stop casting out individuals who are still working through things.
Right.
And I bring up these couple of examples. We think about the mothers who are uplifting, better gun rights, because of their, sons being shot. We think about the individuals who are uplifting Black Lives Matters. These people are currently, mothers, fathers who, have experienced loss, and they're at these rallies, speaking up. And, I think about people who uplift, breast cancer, HIV, AIDS. These people have more than likely just experienced, diagnoses or loss. They're still working through that, but they're advocating. So, to say that someone is less than, or that they can't advocate, or they're not in the right space too, we gonna nip that in the bud. Amen. Advocating can be healing, and can be a part of that journey of healing. That can give somebody that space to feel heard and received.
Yes.
Granted, it is always best to work with those individuals in a strategic speaking way.
Yes.
But everybody don't know how to do that. So let's stop judging. Let's stop, saying, nah, what have you. Everybody is not the Michaels. Everybody is not the Sixtos. Everybody is not, I'm just being real, just throwing it out there. And we need to stop doing that, especially in child welfare.
Yes.
Every voice matters.
Yes.
Every voice,
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to uplift that. Some people gonna be mad at me so well. And yes, I say it so well. I'm not here to, stroke somebody's ego or anything like that. I'm here to be real.
Right.
Be candid and have this space to talk about the real, and just uplift these individuals, all different shapes and sizes, all different backgrounds and expertise, So, I just want to say I appreciate you taking the time out today to speak with me, to share your journey, to share the strides that you have made, not only for yourself, but for others, the sacrifices, the choices, and the hills and barriers you've had to climb over. I truly appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege to see another individual that is just out here trying to work towards life. My last couple things, questions, and more so statements from you. The first one is, what advice would you like to leave here today? It can be categorically or in general, but what advice?
I'm going to leave you all with a quote. And it was kind of on the flyer too, from Lisa Nichols. You are the author of your destiny. That means foster care is one part of the story, but you have the ultimate writing privileges of writing and creating a new narrative for whatever you want to do in your life. You're the author of your own story.
I love that. That reminds me, I came across a pastor when I was in juvenile one time. And then it was crazy because, things just correlate in life. It'd be crazy when you realize that you get that, I was homeless too, and it kind of was the same kind of sermon. But they both said, life is a series of pit stops to your destination. And sometimes people get locked in the pit stop thinking that that's their destination. But truly, they have a nice loft, a nice mansion, whatever you desire, at the end of the road trip, You know, you just got to stop and get gas sometimes. You got
Yeah.
to stop and get some snacks. Use the bathroom, stretch your legs a little bit, you
I love
know.
it.
But you were supposed to get back on the road 5 months ago. You
Mm.
you weren't supposed to stay, you know. And I would call some people out. And you wasn't supposed to stay at old dude house or old girl house. You know, that was not the person for you, you know. You were supposed to still be doing work on yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to be doing some work on themselves, but y'all got caught in between at a season when y'all wasn't ready for each other, you know.
Yeah.
So, and you can change that scenario into however way it fit. It can be a job, it can be whatever, you know. But life is a series of pit stops, you know, on your way to your destination. That's what that quote gives me, you know.
Yes.
How can people, you know, well, lasting comments, how can people follow you? You got a song, an album out there they can check out, you know. Well, I know you got
I have a YouTube, but everything, I'm honestly, everything's on a pause for rebranding. I've been getting some downloads about rebranding and restructuring, but you can find me on LinkedIn at Eshontee Rowe. My name's at the bottom. You can actually find me on Facebook at Rowe, ROWE. I'm also on YouTube, Rowe Music. So yeah, you see that, take the N out, just take the N out. But Rowe Music on YouTube. I have a cover that's on there, and I got a lot of things loading. So you'll see a lot of stuff rolling out within between this week and actually up into the end of the year. You'll see a whole lot of me. Awesome. And you can follow me, and you can actually add me on Facebook. I'm open to adding new friends. I like making new friends on Facebook at Eshontee Rowe as well. So that's how you all can reach me.
Definitely. Awesome. I can't express how much of a privilege it is. And I appreciate you being open to have this conversation, you know, and to just speak about it.
Thank you so much for creating this platform. Like, this platform is needed. Like, it's so needed. So I appreciate you and for what you're doing, because you're changing lives in the foster care and child welfare world and the juvenile justice world. You're going to start shaking a lot of things and breaking a lot of things up, and people are going to start coming to you, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities that open because of this platform that you have created.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, ultimately, I'm doing this, you know, to just make it better for other people.
Absolutely.
Make it better, you know. We talk about pathways, we talk about purpose, you know, we talk about journeys, you know, and I've witnessed what my purpose is. And, you know, I realized I didn't go through what I went through for myself, you know, and a lot of people have to understand that for them, you know, but for me, I've got that understanding that although I experienced these things, and this is, some people not gonna get this, but that's okay. It's selfish of me to keep my experiences to myself.
Yes.
But someone else can, you know, reap benefits and grow and heal from me pouring that out, you know, for me uplifting that. Because some people don't have that voice initially to be like, hey, I've been through this. Some people still feel like they're in that mode we talked about, hush, and just get by. You know, because they have not heard anybody like me or you say it's okay to speak up. Yeah. You know, it's okay to be going through this. You know, there's nothing wrong with you, you know. So
I don't know. I feel like you need to say that again, so somebody else will listen and say, "There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's normal."
Yes, yes. You know, and unfortunately, a lot of people, I don't know how this shift has happened, but kids going through things are getting diagnosed as issues.
Yes.
Like, you know, and I'm just like, you know, trauma affects people in many different ways, but kids are gonna be kids. Kids are gonna make mistakes.
Right.
They're gonna have behavior issues, you know, because they're in that process of learning how to be. Right. And how do you learn how to be without a proper environment to be taught better, you know, or to learn better, you know? If you have dysfunction, chaos trying to teach dysfunction and chaos,
Right.
what are you going to get?
Dysfunction and chaos. Come on.
So, and that's not to call anybody out or point, but the thing is, dysfunction is dysfunction, and it looks like many different shapes and sizes. Chaos looks like many shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's the next person sitting on the other row of you at the assembly or at church,
Yeah.
and the thing is, you would never know it, but in order for us to be better and to be real in society and as this big village of people trying to take care of one another, we cannot hide behind things that we don't feel comfortable sharing out or we feel embarrassed or shame, because we all got issues.
Right.
And we need to stop using, well, I'm better than as,
Right.
A status quo to be over someone else. When you got
Right.
the same issues, you just hiding it a little bit better.
Right.
So that's what I'm gonna leave here. I made enough people mad this episode. I'll say something for the next one. But it's truly a privilege and an honor, and thank you. And it's because of people like yourself, that continue to reassure me that I'm supposed to be doing this and why I'm continuing to do it, because the need is there. And as long as people are willing to come on, as long as people are willing to have these conversations, as long as I can keep this going, So, and thank you.
You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome.
So as I get ready to end, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys really take some of these reflective points home with you. You guys know I often, talk about this, that even if you have nothing to do and you just listening to this episode and you got kids or a family and stuff like that, take some of these points home with you. Have that family conversation, talk about some of these issues that's going on. I believe if in those places where we are families and we start to uplift these with our children and with our family, if we become more aware with information, we can be that much better, so, take some of these things, reflect on them yourself or with someone else, don't let it just die out with yourself though. Share it, share the information. But also, COVID is out there, monkeypox, we're getting ready to go to flu and cold season. Please take care of yourself. Please. We have learned from COVID, we don't need to learn again. We don't need to learn again. And so please, if you feel like something coming on, wear a mask. Don't try to brave it out and get other people sick.
Please.
Wear a mask, if you don't feel comfortable wearing a mask, there's so many different options, of getting your groceries brought to you. There's so many different options. You don't have to go to the mall. You can go to Shein, Amazon, whichever.
Stay your butt at home.
I don't know, but let's try to do better, and let's try to help one another, please, take care of yourself and take care of the people around you. You are a part of your community. So, don't try to set yourself aside and stuff like that. You are a part of it. So help yourself by helping others, So yeah, it has, this is episode 7. And this is season 2. It's been a privilege and an honor. And I plan, to keep season 2 going, recording with individuals until December. I've thought long and hard about this. By that time, I would have released 2 seasons. I don't know how many episodes is going to come out of season 2, but first season 1 started in January 7th of this year. And that released 51 episode with a 3-episode collab miniseries with NFYI. I'm on season 2 right now, speaking with 7 episodes in. So by December, I may take a little break hiatus, and I'm hoping in that little break hiatus, I can not so much do like individual interviews, but take this in a more in-person sense, these conversations, I'm hoping, I don't know, but I'm gonna speak it into existence, hoping to take the Resilient Voices kind of theme and what I've been doing here virtually and bring it out there into the world and go to these communities, go to these places where this is needed, this space for conversation, this space for candidness, this space to be heard, and facilitate some conversation with some people, some folks, some communities, some leaders and stuff like that. I'm hoping to do something like that. I'm going to be probably putting together a fundraiser because I'm doing all this on my own and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I don't have a trust to kind of dig out of or anything like that. So I would appreciate you guys' help. If, even if you can't donate yourself, to when this fundraiser comes up or what have you, like and sharing means all the difference, So just, as you guys see me getting ready to close out this season and you guys know the vision and what have you, and I'll be sharing it throughout a couple other things, I would like to do that. And also it just gives that time to build another, list of folks who's interested in interviewing too, because a lot of this season and last season was me connecting with some of my brothers and sisters and care that I know of. But I know there's a lot of more other people that I may have not connected with, so this would give me opportunity to be able to connect with them and see if they're interested in telling their story too. So thank you. That's the vision, that's the journey, amongst, you guys know I wear several different hats, so it's probably gonna be more stuff coming on and doing out there and everything like that. So, but without further ado, you guys have a good night, good morning, good whenever you're listening to you. Thank you. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Have a good day.